There are days when your mind feels like a storm moving faster than the world can follow. Thoughts flashing, images colliding, ideas blooming before they can even finish taking shape. And somewhere in the middle of all that, a subtle, persistent question echoes inside you. Why can't I function like everyone else? Maybe you've never said it out loud. Maybe you've carried it like a silent weight, a soft shame, wrapped in phrases like "I'm too much," or "I just can't focus," or worse, "Something's wrong with me." But what if nothing is wrong? What if what they call too much is simply more? What if your mind isn't broken, just untrained to navigate the quantum depth it perceives? You see, the world often moves in straight lines. It values order, logic, predictability. It teaches us to measure success by how well we can stay inside those lines. But your mind, your beautiful, wild, expansive mind, was never meant to walk in straight lines. It spirals, it leaps, it touches places most minds don't even know how to reach. And when that kind of perception is forced into boxes, into schedules, into systems that demand silence and stillness, it doesn't thrive, it suffers. There's a hidden pain in having a mind that sees too much, too fast, too deeply, and being told every day that this is a flaw. But that pain isn't yours to carry anymore, not today. Karl Pribram, one of the minds who shaped how we understand the brain, believed something revolutionary, that our brain doesn't simply record information, it processes reality holographically. That means what feels like chaos in your mind may, in truth, be a kind of expanded perception. Not noise, but signal. A signal too rich, too complex, too multidimensional to be reduced to ordinary focus. Perhaps what you've been calling distraction is actually your brain tuning into layers of reality others can't yet access. And Joe Dispenza goes further. He teaches that our mind emits an electromagnetic field, a living vibration that responds to thoughts and emotions. People with ADHD often have a heightened sensitivity to these subtle vibrations. But because no one taught them how to interpret that sensitivity, it manifests as anxiety, overwhelm, or restlessness. Not because they're flawed, but because they're open to a field that is vast, alive, and deeply intelligent. So let me ask you this. What if the very thing you've been trying to fix was never broken? What if your inability to follow their pace, their patterns, their rules is not a failure, but a doorway, a portal, a quantum code written into your perception waiting to be activated? And maybe, just maybe, you're not here to conform to the frequency of the world. Maybe you're here to shift it. Let's walk through that portal together. It often begins in childhood, in small moments that don't look like trauma, but leave deep scars. A teacher sighing when you forget the instructions again. A parent asking why you never finish what you start. Friends laughing when you lose your place in the middle of a sentence because your thoughts are already 5 steps ahead. No one says it out loud, but it's felt. You are too much and yet not enough. That's how the first fracture forms, not in the mind, but in your frequency. A subtle belief begins to take root, like a silent agreement whispered into your nervous system. Something is wrong with me. And you begin to carry that belief everywhere, in how you walk into rooms, how you hold your body in conversations, how you begin and abandon ideas before they can breathe. That belief doesn't stay in your thoughts. It becomes your vibration. And vibration is creation. When you internalize the idea that you are broken, your energetic field starts to collapse inward. Your brain waves harden into survival mode. You stay in beta, a frequency of vigilance, overthinking, fragmentation. The world feels loud, time feels short, and you lose touch with the part of you that is capable of stillness, of vision, of deep coherence. But coherence is not silence, it's alignment. And your natural alignment, the one buried beneath the shame, the judgment, the fatigue, may not live in beta at all. It may live in alpha, or theta, or even deeper. Places where the mind softens and listens, places where intuition speaks and creativity flows, not as effort, but as breath. So perhaps the true deficit isn't in attention. Perhaps the deficit is in acceptance, in permission, in being seen not as a problem to be fixed, but as a different frequency longing to be remembered. Because you were never broken, you were vibrating outra sintonia. And your healing begins when you stop asking, "How can I be like them?" and start whispering with quiet reverence, "What if this is who I came here to be?" You've been told your whole life that focus is about staying still, that to be intelligent, to be productive, to be valuable, you must fix your attention on one thing and follow it, without interruption, until the end. And every time your mind drifted, every time you jumped from one thought to another like sparks leaping across the sky, you were told, "You're distracted. You're failing." But what if that definition of focus was never meant for you? There is a kind of perception that doesn't follow a straight line. It expands like a web, reaching in multiple directions at once. It listens not just to what is visible, but to what is subtle. It doesn't concentrate, it tunes in. That's what your mind does. And it's not wrong, it's not lazy, it's not unfocused, it's quantum. Your brain might be functioning like a vibrational radar, receiving signals not just from what's in front of you, but from what surrounds you, what's behind, what's beneath. You're not just observing the world, you're absorbing it. And when no one teaches you how to ground that ability, it can feel like chaos. But chaos is only unintegrated signal. It's not the absence of intelligence. It's intelligence without a container. The truth is, you are focusing all the time, but not on what they want you to, not on what the world calls useful. You're focusing on patterns, on meaning, on energy, on feelings that haven't found words yet. That is not failure. That is a different kind of awareness, one that, if guided, becomes a gift of insight so profound it borders on the mystical. And maybe that's why your mind jumps. Maybe your thoughts aren't scattered. Maybe they're mapping an invisible landscape, jumping not from one distraction to another, but from one vibration to the next. Because you feel more than you can explain. You sense more than you can translate. You know, but you don't know how you know. And in a world obsessed with linear logic, that knowing is often dismissed. But what if focus is not about holding attention tight, but about learning where your soul wants to place it? What if the flickering of your mind is not zapping, but scanning? Try this. The next time your thoughts start to jump, pause for a moment, not to stop them, but to listen. What are they reaching for? What pattern are they trying to show you? Your mind may not obey commands, but it responds to permission. Give it permission to be intuitive. Give it permission to be different. Give it permission to be yours. Because maybe your attention was never broken. It was just never anchored in the right dimension. There is a particular kind of restlessness that lives in those who carry visions too early. A feeling that time is slipping, that life is delayed, that the world is always behind, or that you are always late. You wake up with urgency, you fall asleep with guilt, and somewhere in between there is a quiet despair that whispers, "Why can't I just catch up?" But what if you were never behind? What if your rhythm isn't delayed? It's dimensional. You see, people with ADHD often live in a paradox of time. They sense what hasn't happened yet. Ideas arrive long before the structure to contain them. Insights drop in before the readiness to embody them. And because the outer world doesn't move at that same speed, there is dissonance. And that dissonance becomes anxiety, not because you are lost, but because your soul is sprinting ahead of your nervous system. It's not that you lack discipline, it's that your perception collapses time. You don't just plan the future, you feel it. You don't just imagine, you access. And when you can't manifest what you see, when the bridge between vision and form is fragile, your body reacts. It contracts, it pushes, it spirals. Not because you're broken, but because you've touched something true and didn't know how to bring it into the now. The world measures life in clocks and calendars, but your internal time doesn't tick, it pulses. It moves in rhythms, in cycles, in waves. You move forward by circling inward. You create not by pushing, but by aligning. And the deeper you try to obey the external timeline, the further you drift from your natural pace. So instead of rushing, what if you learn to land? Instead of trying to accelerate, what if you learn to inhabit? Slowing down doesn't mean suppressing your creativity. It means syncing it with your body, with your breath, with the now. Because your ideas are not just thoughts, they are frequencies waiting to crystallize into form. And they need more than urgency. They need presence. Your rhythm is not a mistake. It is not laziness. It is not a defect in your motivation. It is a quantum signature. It is a different geometry of time. And honoring that rhythm, not resisting it, is the beginning of coherence. Because you weren't made to follow the clock, you were made to listen to time from within. There are moments when your mind feels like 1,000 open windows, all playing different music, all demanding attention. Thoughts collide, sensations overlap. You reach for one idea, and 3 more appear. It's not confusion, it's intensity. But when intensity lacks a center, it becomes exhaustion. What you often call chaos is not disorder, it is raw energy. And raw energy, when met with intention, becomes creation. People with ADHD frequently navigate the world with heightened sensory input. Every sound, every movement, every texture can feel amplified. But in a society that trains us to numb, to filter, to suppress, this sensitivity turns against itself. It floods, it overwhelms. But what if it was never meant to be numbed? What if it was meant to be guided? Your senses can become your allies, your breath, your touch, your gaze. Each one is a gateway, a bridge between thought and presence, between overstimulation and coherence. Imagine this. Instead of resisting the noise inside you, you create rituals that give it shape. You anchor yourself not by fighting your energy, but by offering it direction. A simple texture beneath your fingers, a candle's flicker drawing your eyes, a breath conscious and slow, pressing into your chest like a quiet drum. You are not trying to silence your mind. You are teaching it to land. These anchors, sensory, intentional, symbolic, begin to act like tuning forks. They align your scattered frequencies into a harmonic state. And when your energy is harmonic, your creativity no longer burns you out. It flows, it builds, it takes form. Your mind is not a problem to control. It is a current to navigate. And that current doesn't need force. It needs form. Just enough structure to let the light pass through. Just enough rhythm to let inspiration breathe. This is not about productivity. It's about presence. It's about turning your sensitivity into intelligence, your chaos into clarity, your overwhelm into ritual, because your energy is sacred. And when guided by intention, even the wildest storm becomes a river. Try to picture this. Your mind as a vortex of light, not a bulb that shines in one direction, but a spiral, spinning, refracting, pulsing with colors that shift faster than language can hold. This is not metaphor. It is architecture. Because your mind doesn't move in lines, it bends, it curves, it folds reality into layers. And yet, that light often meets a wall, not because it's dim, but because it lacks a frame. It overflows. It burns through the edges of ordinary thinking. And when there's no container, even beauty becomes disorientation. The pain, then, is not in the light. It's in the absence of structure to hold it. You are not scattered. You are luminous. But you live in a world that demands angles when you were born to move in spirals. A world that calls you distracted when, in truth, your perception expands in all directions. Your thoughts don't follow order. They follow resonance. They chase meaning, not steps. And that's not dysfunction. That's design. But a vortex without grounding becomes a storm. A light without direction blinds instead of illuminating. So the question is not, how do I fix my mind? The question is, what kind of structure can honor the shape of my light? Maybe it's not a schedule, maybe it's not a plan, maybe it's a ritual, a rhythm, a return, something sacred, something soft, something that lets your brilliance crystallize instead of evaporate. Because your mind is already powerful, it already sees what others miss, it already touches what hasn't been spoken. The only thing it needs is a place to land, a body that feels safe, a space that respects its tempo, a frame that doesn't imprison, but holds. You are not too much. You are more than they were ready to understand. And the journey is not about becoming normal, it is about becoming whole. Because when your inner vortex finds its center, the same light that once overwhelmed you begins to illuminate the path. There's a sorrow that doesn't scream, it sighs, a quiet ache beneath the surface of every effort to seem normal. It's the weight of believing you're wrong for simply being how you are. And that weight, carried for years, doesn't just live in your thoughts, it lives in your cells. Bruce Lipton, a pioneer in bridging biology and consciousness, revealed something profound. That our genes do not determine our destiny, they respond to our beliefs, to our emotions, to the invisible field we create around us every day. So when you repeat to yourself, I can't, I fail, I'm broken, your biology listens, your brain architecture listens, your heart rhythm listens, and the body, in its loyalty, adapts, not to your truth, but to your programming. But if programming can limit, it can also liberate. The shift begins when guilt dissolves, when you stop punishing yourself for not fitting in and begin honoring yourself for perceiving differently. When you stop blaming your pace, your process, your path, and begin sensing the intelligence in your difference. Neville Goddard once said, "Imagination is the creative force of the universe." What you imagine consistently, you begin to embody. So imagine, not escape. Imagine with reverence. Imagine yourself no longer as broken, but as brilliant. Imagine your mind not as a burden, but as a bridge between worlds, between frequencies, between what is and what could be. You are not your diagnosis. You are not a label. You are a field of possibility that was never meant to be contained. And maybe, just maybe, the universe placed that field inside you not as an error, but as an experiment, a sacred laboratory, a chance to birth new ways of sensing, thinking, living. So the question that remains, soft and powerful, is this: what if the very thing you thought disqualified you from this world was exactly what you came here to transform?